And welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Faith, the Wrestling Session Volumes. I am absolutely over the moon to have one of our cousins from across the Atlantic, fantastic indie wrestler. Seriously, guys, you've got to check out his outfits and his moves as well on Twitter. It's J2. J2, how are you doing, dude?
I'm great. Doing really good. Just here, another sunny day in San Diego.
Another sunny day in San Diego. And as we were saying just before the podcast, your weather over there couldn't be more of a contrast if it tried to what we've got over here in the UK. So make it last, brother. So, J2, most important question I'm going to ask you throughout this podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a good 2022. I would say COVID's been pretty tough. You know, a lot of wrestling stopped during COVID, and a lot of the independents here in the United States was struggling to put on shows, especially here in California. They're very strict on COVID guidelines, so it was very tough to do indoor shows. So a lot of the shows had to be outside, and they still are for some venues, as I've seen recently.
Wow, fair play. So with those outdoor venues, because obviously, like it was over in the UK, and no doubt the rest of the wrestling world, you know, all over, things had to change. Obviously, you and I, being huge wrestling fans, we'll have seen the likes of the mainstream shows such as Impact, AEW, WWE, NWA, obviously New Japan, and various others as well. Obviously GCW and a few others that we've forgotten to mention. Literally, it's you're playing to a closed venue. You're literally playing behind closed doors. So obviously, you guys over there in the Indies in California, you'll have had to adapt it as well. What was it like then, going from playing indoor venues to having the people there, to having the fans really get on board, to obviously playing outdoors? What was the big difference, obviously, aside from being outdoors, did you notice as a wrestler?
Yeah. So one of the biggest difference was before. So I trained at Level Up Pro Wrestling School down in San Diego with B-Boy, one of the CZW Hall of Famer. He's my head trainer.
Fantastic.
And he one thing he really wanted to do during the pandemic was train. And luckily for us, we were able to still train during COVID. There was just no shows for, I would say, almost about 6 months. Wow. And we came up with the idea of maybe taping our own shows and uploading them to IWTV. So what we ended up doing was we would tape weekly showcases of just our students wrestling each other. So we would never stop wrestling. And I would say that that's what really helped everyone at that school improve. It helped me improve. It helped me find myself as a wrestler and as a character. But the transition from camera work to no fans and then transitioning to outdoor venues, it was a little tough at first because we got so used to wrestling in front of nobody that we were more wrestling each other. We were wrestling for each other, feeding off each other. And then we had to do that quick switch where now we had to bring the fans back in and feed from them. And it was pretty tough at first, but then now everyone's kind of getting the hang of it again. So it was a very great, I would say, great experience for all of us.
Fantastic. And I'm sure you're much more appreciative, I suppose a lot of wrestlers are, and a lot of people who organise the shows, of how important the fans are as well. You know, because the heat or the cheers that you can get from fans can really just turn a match, can't it? It could make or break a match. So I'm sure it goes without saying, and probably you guys would probably agree as well in San Diego, that you're much more appreciative now of the fans when they are there.
Oh, 100%, 100%. The fans is really, you know, it's really the show. That's to me, it's one of the biggest things in wrestling. Without them, there's really not much, just the wrestling. But when you add the crowd to it, it just adds so much to the storytelling in matches, and it adds so much for us at the same time.
Fantastic. Well, you're just leading me on there. Nice little link there. Storytelling. Tell me the story of you then. How did J2 come about? Where were the origins? What was the first time you thought, this is something I really want to do? What are your inspirations? What still are? And obviously what created all these years later, J2?
Well, it started very young age. I mean, just like anybody else, you'd watch early WWE. I would say I started watching WWE around the time when John Cena just won the WWE title at WrestleMania 21 in Los Angeles. Yeah. I just barely got started into that, but the funny thing is, he wasn't the first guy I saw. The first guy I ever saw was the Undertaker, and ever since I saw the Undertaker, I was just drawn to him and his character. And ever since that time, I just fell in love with it, and I would watch wrestling ever since. But I would say this was probably around 8 years old. I was about pretty young, and then over time, I kept watching it, and then I kind of took a break. But then right after, I would say high school, I started looking into wrestling schools, and I just never knew if I wanted to do it or not, because I was also pursuing acting.
Right.
And I did a couple things in Hollywood. I did some auditions, some commercials, just to kind of get experience in that. And then I had the opportunity to finally get to train with B-Boy at another school. It was called Battle U before, down here in San Diego. And I just took the chance. My brother, he was actually the one that wanted to be a wrestler, and he asked me, "Hey, if I did this, would you go do it with me?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." So originally, my plan was not to stick with it. I was just gonna go help my brother out so he can follow his dream, and I was gonna leave and go back to acting. But unfortunately for that, he decided not to do it. But I decided to stick with it, and ever since then, I just kept doing it.
Fantastic, fair play, man. So literally, so what we're saying then is you're blaming your brother for your wrestling career panning out the way it is in the politest way possible. Fair play.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's unique. That so I would imagine then. Sorry, I don't know if your mic's breaking up slightly, dude. I don't know if it's maybe going to come across on the recording or not, but I think your mic's breaking up ever so slightly.
Okay, let me see if I can fix it real fast.
No worries, my friend. And obviously, just while you're doing that as well, you first saw The Undertaker, you got into a bit of acting then. So what was the idea then? Was that your original dream to become an actor then? Was that where you really wanted to go with it all then originally?
Yeah. I did theater in high school, and I really enjoyed musical theater. And my teachers would tell me, "Hey, you should really pursue this." And I did a little bit of it in college, and then pretty much they all would tell me the same thing: "Hey, go to Hollywood, get an agent." So I ended up doing that.
Following the American dream. Yeah, well, that's something that you and I have got in common there, because I did performing arts at college as well. And originally, I just wanted to be a musician. That's all I wanted to do. But yeah, so I did performing arts for a year, so I could kind of, nowhere near on the scale as what you've done, nowhere near at all. But yeah, I've dabbled a little bit, and yeah, I think I've saved a lot of people in theatres and TV shows from diverting into other things. But from that, so you got into that. You obviously, you're a big fan of John Cena, big fan of The Undertaker. How can you not be, man? I mean, these guys are iconic. Love them or hate them, you're always going to remember them for that thing, which is wrestling. So what was it about these two wrestlers in particular that thought, hang on a minute, maybe I could get involved in this?
I think for me, it was just the way that people reacted to them, the way that they would walk into a room and everyone would stop and give all their attention to them and automatically react to whatever they would say or whatever they would do. And I just thought that was amazing. And it reminded me so much of theater, where, in theater, the spotlight's on you, and the attention's all on you. My wife kind of jokes with me and says, "Oh, you just want all this attention on you. That's why you want to be."
Funny enough, my wife says a similar thing to me, my friend. So yeah, we're not alone there. But yes, obviously the attention thing, and but you've got to be the one. I mean, you and I both know. I mean, you know more than me, being an actual wrestler, that far more often than not, it's one-on-one competition. And one of you, if not both of you, have got to stand out, and you've got to have something, whether it's a gimmick, certain signature moves, outfits, music, an attitude, a persona, a character. So it's very, very important, because as you well know, if you're in theatre, far more often than not, you can bounce off other people around you as well. So it's important. So how did you make that sort of transition from thinking, right, the pressure's on me now, and how did you cope with that to try and get to the character of J2?
Yeah, it was definitely a process to kind of figure out what character I wanted to go with. And it's funny because you go into wrestling, some people just kind of already have an idea, some people just have no clue. And I would say I thought I had an idea, but unfortunately for me, when I got here, it's a very competitive market of wrestlers where everyone's kind of already done a lot of the same thing, and you want to be different. And it's one thing that my coach B-Boy would always tell us: hey, don't try to be someone else, try to be your own, try to create your own character, be different. And over time, I would just come up with ideas. I would try to do promos and try to find myself. And one thing I was really into was Tron. I would be very into the look, that futuristic, the helmets, the lights, and I decided, you know what? I've never seen anybody in wrestling that looks like a Tron guy. I mean, there was guys like Mustafa Ali that would have the light up gimmick. DJZ, he would also have the light up gimmick in Impact, and I just said to myself, well, yeah, their stuff lights up, but you know, they don't really look futuristic to me. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do this Tron look. And on my first match on Ground Zero down in San Diego, which is our big indie promotion in San Diego, I decided to debut this Tron look. And I remember coming out and everybody loved it. Everybody was super into it. The lights would come on and people just kind of knew me as that. They were like, hey, that's the Tron guy. So it kind of started like that.
Excellent. And it kind of stuck as well. Obviously, since you and I have been playing sort of a bit of email tennis, messenger tennis through Twitter, been looking at the videos as well, and when you're coming out. And one of the things that I said to you before we started recording was one of the first wrestlers that stuck in my mind was when I saw some of your videos was Jushin Liger as well. The sort of, you know, a very, very distinctive, very just like you touched upon there. You've got to create something where people go, wow, did you see that dude coming out with all that? Do you know what I mean? And when I saw some of your videos walking down, it was very much like that for me. That's one of the wrestlers that sort of stuck in my mind. But in terms of styles of wrestling, what is, since you've obviously started training, becoming a wrestler, what would you say that your favorite kind of style is?
Man, I always go to this one. It's King's Road.
Right.
King's Road style. I love that style. I got introduced to it, I would say, fairly, I would say two years ago. One of my friends, a couple of my friends that train with me, they would always, they would always talk to me and tell me, hey, you got the Japanese body type, you know, you got that 90s Japan look. And I didn't know what they were talking about. I'd always think they were like, I don't know what these guys are talking about. But they were like, man, you just look like those guys. You're big and you're not, you know, you can take damage and give damage at the same time. So I really got into that style of King's Road, which is like, you know, the four pillars, Misawa, Taue, Kobashi, and Kawada. And I love watching those matches. It's amazing the damage these guys do, but the storytelling that goes into these matches and how long they go, but they're still entertaining. That's just the style that I love, and I try to emulate so much today in today's wrestling, because it's hard. I see people trying to emulate the style all the time, but it's very difficult to have that style like they did back in the 90s nowadays.
It is, yeah. And I think that, I mean, even now, to a lot of a new generation of wrestlers, especially since now we've had the rise of AEW as well, to coincide to take on the likes of WWE and Impact as well, which is, you know, and NWA, which you and I know are already well established mainstream wrestling formats. They've spent a lot of time, especially sort of during the pandemic, in introducing a lot of male and Japanese wrestlers as well, that Western audiences might not necessarily go onto YouTube or stream on TV and think, oh, I'm just going to try watching, you know, New Japan or other promotions across there as well. Do you think that certainly helps you in terms of when you say that you're talking about the four pillars and obviously the King's Road style? Do you think people start to get it now that there's been quite a crossover with like the Bullet Club and obviously Japanese wrestlers coming over into mainstream America as well?
Yeah, I definitely think that nowadays a lot of it's not even just the Japanese style. I've seen even some British style wrestling, some old World of Sport coming back, which is pretty nice to see. I
Yeah.
started dabbling in that stuff as well, but yeah, I've seen a lot of the old stuff starting to kind of peek through nowadays in wrestling. I've noticed a lot of guys are starting to study more, and I don't know if the pandemic was something that made guys say, "Hey, that's really cool stuff," and I'm going to start bringing that back because there's a lot of the top guys right now in the indies and guys that are getting signed that are starting to kind of bring that style, those styles back into light, and also kind of combine them together, which is a pretty beautiful thing to see.
It is as well. I mean, you touch on there, obviously the British wrestling. You know, you go back to who we would class as British wrestling legends, not just the likes of obviously Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid, but even like sort of pre that as well, where we had Big Daddy, Kendo Nagasaki, Giant Haystacks. I mean, these guys were absolute units at the time. And this used to be on mainstream TV, you know, over here in the UK. This was something that you could just watch on a Saturday afternoon with your family. And it was great to see that sort of evolve. And like you say, when we finally got the British Bulldogs into WWF, as it was at the time, and wrestlers like that as well. And you've touched upon something else there as well during the pandemic about studying, researching those who've been there and done it decades before. I've spoken to guys as well on the podcast that said during the pandemic, one of the best things that they did, aside from continuously training with each other and having Zoom meetings, was studying. Is that something that you got a lot out of during, especially the more hardcore side of lockdown?
Yes, yes. I would, like I said, I was studying King's Road the most out of every style. I was watching some old WWE as well, more for storytelling, but I just really dove deep into King's Road because that was just that style that caught my eye. And Misawa was the guy that, to me, was the one that stood out the most. Obviously, all four of them are fantastic, but it's funny because my buddies that told me to watch it, they would always call me Mini Misawa because I remind them so much of him. But at the same time, it goes back to trying to be different. I'm not trying to be the next Misawa. I just want to be J2. But hey, if I have elements of Misawa in my wrestling, that means just as much to me.
But there's no harm in what we would call over here sort of magpieing other people's ideas and then
Right.
sticking it in a big melting pot and then putting your own stamp on it as well and putting
Right.
your own personality. You know, you've got to learn from somebody who's been there, done it, in order to form yourself, haven't you? It's the same with any industry that you're doing. So the character of J2, storytelling. So what's his persona? What's J2 all about? What's his goals? What's the potential end game for J2, the character?
Yeah, it was a pretty big evolution from what I originally had an idea for him. For because originally I had it where he was from a cyber world and he came into the wrestling world to take out viruses, and that was kind of the start of it. But then B-Boy kind of told me, hey, let's kind of go a little more real life and try to mix it up. And I decided to change it to the playmaker. And I really got inspiration from Okada for the play because he does the Rainmaker.
Yeah.
He's a rainmaker who makes money rain. But for me, I said, I'm a very big sports guy. I love watching football, American and also soccer.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
biggest thing inspires me is those top athletes that can change games in instants. And I always told myself, there's got to be a pro wrestler out there that could be something like that, like a playmaker in wrestling where they just change the match around at any moment. And that's kind of the character I went for, was this guy who will come into a room and just when you think he's out, they'll just change the game right away and change it in his favor. Or even it's always been in his favor, even when it looks like it's not. So that's kind of the way I wanted the character to go.
Awesome stuff. And how long have you actually been doing the wrestling then? So how long since your first match have you been actually doing it?
Yeah, it's been 4.5 years.
Wow.
4.5 years. Yeah, fairly. So people would consider that fairly still early. But I started when I was 25. Yeah, started training when I was 24. Debuted when I was 25. But yeah, ever since then, it's just been a journey. Just learning and learning and getting better and better, and just wrestling named people that helped me learn how to get better. So it's crazy how much you can do in a short amount of time if you just keep at it.
Absolutely, yeah. Persistence is the key. Talk me through the debut match then. So pre-match nerves and everything else. Talk me through, how that felt and what type of match was it that you actually did your debut in?
Yeah, my very first match ever was actually a tag match. I was a fill-in at another promotion. My coach came up to me and he said, "Hey, you got your gear?" And I said, "Yeah, I have my gear. I hadn't debuted yet, but we had our gear just in case if there's a situation." I was about to debut. He said, "Oh, there's a spot tonight, and I wanted you to take on. You would tag team with this other guy to take on your buddies." The other two guys I wrestled were my best friends, Casey Douglas and Michael Hopkins, who were also part of a tag team that I'm in called 8-Bit Lit. And those are the two guys that actually wrestled the first time ever for the first time. And it was pretty difficult at first. The nerves are like, oh, wow, I'm going to wrestle tonight. So I called my wife, called her mom. I said, "Hey, I'm wrestling tonight. You guys got to come down and watch me." And it's funny because it definitely wasn't what I thought it was going to be at first, because the very first time I walked out there, I got absolutely booed. Walked out there. This was for tag titles. The tag champion, his buddy, couldn't make it, so I had to fill in for him. And they were going to lose the titles to my friends, Casey and Hops. So you can only imagine they were like, "Hey, where's your partner at?" So they were a little disappointed. So they were booing me. And I was also extremely babyface. I was walking out there like, "Let's go." So
Wow.
the crowd was just booing me like crazy. And
So you almost got like a John Cena reaction anyway, like going for the hardcore baby face and still getting pelters from the crowd.
Exactly. But it was a great experience. Kind of opened my eyes to like, wow, it's not always what you think when you first get into it. But I still loved the fact that I was going out there and performing in front of a crowd, because either way, I was able to make that crowd feel something. So I still enjoyed it. And then I had my actual debut at Ground Zero versus one of my trainers at the time. His name was Joe Hyken. He trained with Jonathan Gresham in Atlanta.
Jonathan Gresham, yeah.
He's very Joe Hyken. He was very skilled. He came down to San Diego. He decided to move over there and train with us, and he was my debut match, and it was extremely fun. He was very talented. Unfortunately, I don't think he wrestles anymore. I think he decided to call it quits, but I'm glad that I was able to have a match with him, because he was one of those guys that I definitely wanted to get in the ring with.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, like say, Jonathan Gresham, man, is absolutely awesome. And he obviously his time in Ring of Honor, and obviously will he, won't he join Honor No More in Impact as well, at the moment, which is a great storyline. Really, really enjoying that with the ex-Ring of Honor wrestlers and in Impact as well. So that must have been absolutely amazing. Obviously, we can see and hear your son in the background. What does Leonardo think of wrestling as well?
He does not like going to live shows. He hates it, especially when I get beat up. He does not like it. My wife would always tell me that when he sees me taking some heat, he will always start getting shaky and get a little scared. But he absolutely loves watching me on the screen, though. Every time I put the videos on the computer, or I'm on my phone watching the highlights, he'll watch it. He'll stop what he's doing, and he wants to watch me. So I would say my son loves to watch wrestling. I don't know if he wants to do it though.
That's what I say. You could maybe use him as a training partner, or maybe you could use, if it's like my kids, like they use me as the training partner or the punch bag, like when they were growing up. So yeah, but it's just great though, isn't it? I mean, like when they see dad, and when he sees dad on TV, he must think dad's a star. It must be awesome for you as his dad to sit there and think, wow, he's really, really buying into this.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of my biggest goals is just that I don't want my son to grow up, thinking, wow, my dad, he tried to do this and he only stopped here, or he didn't even do this. But my goal is, I just want my son to know that whatever he wants to do, that you can do it, as long as gives it his all, and he fully goes into it. And I wanted to be that example for him.
Superb. Amen to that. So obviously the wrestling, we've talked obviously a lot as standard regarding the wrestling. What are your other influences then? So what, when J2's not doing his thing, and obviously you're not coaching, being coached, I should say, training and studying, and what are your other influences in your life aside from your family as well that have helped you in your journey on the way to wrestling?
Definitely sports. I mean, I was a very big sports guy in high school. I played a lot of lacrosse. I did a bit of wrestling, Greco-Roman style wrestling in high school. I also did football, American football, and I did play soccer for a good amount of time after. I just really got into that, and those were the kind of the things that made me want to say, you know what, I could do this. I'm an athlete. Why couldn't I do this? And then as well as theater, theater is a very big aspect in wrestling. A lot of athletes struggle with the promos, and they struggle with the characters sometimes because they don't have that. They've never really performed in front of people on stage. So those are a couple things that kind of molded me into wanting to do the wrestling, and I think made it a little bit easier. But another thing I'm very big into is video editing. I do a lot of the editing for Level Up down in San Diego on IWTV. I get all the footage and I put it together and make an episode. So I'm very, very good at video editing. So that's one of the things I like to do on my spare time.
So when I put this together and I send you the link and I put it on YouTube, you can sit there and critique every little thing that I do. I need to make sure this one's 100% on point then, don't I, when I get this one out. So yeah, I look forward. Do you know what, man? You could give me some tips, because I'm an absolute novice, as you can probably tell by the videos that I've tried putting together. So just literally learning step by step. So I look forward to your teaching on that. And so yeah, obviously wrestling, and in terms of anything like sort of to do with any faith aspects, do you have any faith aspects in your family life and in your growing up as well?
Yeah, when I was younger, my mom was Catholic, but she was Christian at the same time. It's kind of a weird way to explain it. Her husband was Catholic, but she was Christian, so it was kind of a weird mix up for religion. But I got baptized when I was about 12 years old at a Presbyterian church, and I went to this youth group that really taught me about faith, and made me really get close to God, because when I was younger, I didn't like going to church. I didn't like praying. I didn't like none of that. But then I started going to this youth group with my best friend at the time, and I just loved the teachings that we were learning, and of how God loves us, and things like that. And it was just something I needed in my life at that time, because I was still trying to find myself. And I definitely feel like going to church and having faith helped me find myself and be more comfortable to be myself.
Amen to that. And God has as you all know as well, God has a hand in everything that we do. And there are so many things that we as people try and chase. And if it doesn't happen there and then, we as humans are obviously naturally impatient. And with God, it's all about planting the seeds and just seed time and harvest and just waiting for these things to come to fruition. And you've obviously done like a lot in such a short amount of time, and obviously theatre, studying performing arts, going for auditions as well, which massively helps. You put that into a melting pot of a good stability of faith. Do you think it helps you become more patient as you get older, as you're seeing others around you maybe getting opportunities that you think, do you know what, I could really do these opportunities? Do you find that your faith has helped you become patient and learn and take time and understand, right, I need to literally put one foot in front of the other?
Oh yeah, 100%. I definitely think that faith has really helped me understand the process of everything in life. A lot of guys in the business, and even just in life in general, are very impatient. Everybody wants the carrot at the end of the stick right away. Nobody kind of works for it, and that's something that I've kind of learned over time, is that at the right moment you will get your opportunity, but you do have to, God puts these opportunities in front of us. It's just up to us to make that choice to take them.
Amen. 100% agree with that. You only have to look around you every single day to see where God's work is. You know, you don't have to look too far, and you don't have to walk too far as well to find it. So awesome, man. That's a really, really good attitude. And I really, really appreciate you sharing that with us as well. So, mate, man, this has been amazing. I mean, we could talk all night, but we are late, getting late in the UK. So, and I've not sat down with the family to have tea yet. So,
Oh man.
yeah, so I better do that before it ends up in the bin. Before we wrap up, though, I promised you that I would fire at you some quick fire questions, and I catch every wrestler off guard with these. So, first one is J2. Congratulations. You have just become the captain of the Survivor Series team. You're going against my team. Okay. I'm not going to tell you the 4 guys who I'm going to pick for my team just yet, because I want you to play your hand first. You've got 4 wrestlers from any promotion alive, or they've gone to be with the Lord. You can choose anybody from any era, any promotion. Who are the 4 men and or women potentially that are going to back you up on your Survivor Series team against me?
Definitely going to be Misawa, Mitsuharu Misawa,
Yeah.
Kazuchika Okada, Bret the Hitman Hart, and I would say The Undertaker.
Wow, you fired that back at me quicker than anybody has previously done. 100%. I think off the top of my head, I think I'm going to go with, not for controversial reasons, but because I have seen this guy fight live as well. Chris Benoit, just an amazing technical wrestler, absolutely class. And the guy who I saw him fight a 2 out of 3 falls match with in the UK as well, Kurt Angle. I'd have Kurt Angle in there. I think purely just because he's currently going now, and I think he's a phenomenal athlete, Kenny Omega. I think I definitely have Kenny in there. And I think as well, I'm going to go on the fly on this one, just because he's my favourite wrestler growing up. And I wish this guy was my dad, Kane, but original Kane, Attitude Era Kane, certainly not corporate Kane. So I think that's who I'd go with. J2, congratulations. You have just won the TNT Championship in AEW. You have now done that on your debut. The following week, you've issued an open air challenge to anybody in the locker room in AEW. Who do you hope comes straight out to answer the call?
It's got to be one of the best in the world, and that would be Daniel Bryan. Or Bryan Danielson.
Yeah. Either or. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Bryan Danielson. What is it about Bryan Danielson that you think I'd love to go toe to toe with that guy?
Just the fact that he is the epitome of what a wrestler is. A guy, and not only is he everything that wrestling is, but the fact that he was a guy that said, it's all about the basics. You got to focus on the basics. And he's a guy that wasn't very big when he first started, and he worked his way there. And to me, that's more important. Hard work is more important than someone that's just given opportunities. I believe that when you work hard for something, it means more to you. And I think he's one of those guys that definitely worked his ass off.
100%. I mean, that guy, we know he's had his injury issues as well. Obviously, during some of his time in WWE, he obviously retired. We thought we'd never see him step back and lace up his boots again. And when he came into AEW, he just looks like he's not missed a beat. The fact that he's going through like half an hour matches and hour matches, one-on-one with the likes of Kenny Omega, with Hangman, and he just looks like he hasn't missed a beat at all. So yeah, great choice. On the type of match then, you've got the ideal gimmick match that you can have at the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania. It's at Madison Square Gardens. What gimmick match would you have at an event like that?
I would definitely want to test my conditioning and strength, because that's something that's very big to me. And I would definitely want to have a 60-minute Ironman match.
Yeah, I mean that's serious stamina, cardio, endurance in it, and everything else rolled into one. It's absolutely, and there are some classic ones, aren't they? I mean, for me, the ones that really stick out are the ones between John Cena and Batista as well. Back in the day, there were some great Ironman matches, but there's been so many as well before that as well. Obviously, during the Attitude Era and things like that. J2, it's been an absolute pleasure, brother. God bless you. Really, really appreciate the time. and rescheduling as well to have this podcast with me. The floor's yours now, my friend. I want you to plug anything and everything where people can catch J2, all your social media platforms, and what events are coming up as well. The floor's yours.
Yeah, you guys can follow me at J2 Mattioli at Instagram, also on Twitter. You guys can also find me on YouTube for any highlight videos, any content that I would put out. One of the promotions I definitely want to put out there is Level Up Pro Wrestling down in San Diego. I also want to put out B-Boy, New Age Punisher, CZW Hall of Famer, and SoCal Legend, my trainer. Things like that. And our next event that's happening down here in San Diego, you'll also be able to watch it on iwtv.com. It's an independent pro wrestling streaming service. You can look up Level Up Pro Wrestling or Ground Zero, and you'll be able to find all our wrestling events. But our next event is Level Up Next Episode. That's happening on March 14th, I believe. But I would say that the episode will probably be on a week after that, so probably around March 28th, 29th, around that time.
Fantastic. And everything that J2 was mentioned there, I'll be putting all the links in on the YouTube video as well. So check out the links, follow, add, subscribe, and just get on board with this guy, because honestly, just check out the entrances as well as the wrestling. Honestly, guys, you are not going to be disappointed in any way, shape, or form. J2, it just leaves me to say, on behalf of the Wrestling with Faith podcast, God bless you, my friend, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Take care, brother.